Hello, everyone. Good morning. Happy Friday. Welcome to our conversation about reducing food waste in your kitchen. My name is Francesca, and this is my coworker, Kat, who's here to help me today, and we are from 18 Reasons. So 18 Reasons is a nonprofit community cooking school located in San Francisco. We offer two programs, our 18th Street Kitchen Classroom and our Cooking Matters program. If you're interested in taking classes with us, check out our calendar at www.18reasons.org. And our Cooking Matters program is actually free for low-income communities throughout the Bay Area. We offer a variety of cooking and nutrition classes paired with grocery distribution. So today, we will be talking about food waste. And I just want to say this is live, so if you're watching now, thank you for joining us. You're welcome to pop any questions you might have in the chat box. Kat's here to answer, and our wonderful chef, Mike, is actually here as well, so can help us answer some questions today. So over the last year, 18 Reasons has partnered with Stop Waste, which is a public agency committed to reducing waste in Alameda County. So with their help, we have really reflected on our own practices, how we think about food in our classes, and how we deal with food waste in our own homes. So today I'm going to take you on a little tour of my kitchen, show you some of the ways I reduce food waste in my own home. And then we will hear from one of our peer health educators, Elsa, who has also been trying to reduce food waste. And our chefs, Mike and Elise, will show you a really delicious recipe that utilizes all components of the ingredients. So they'll be making a spiced pear cake and pear and parsnip soup. So yeah, thank you so much again for being here. So the first step on our food waste journey has been kind of taking a look and seeing where food actually goes to waste. So I'm sure you've heard about food waste. It's been a really big topic the last couple of years, and for a good reason. So globally, 1/3 of all food that is produced is wasted ultimately. And that doesn't just mean the food is going to waste, but the time, the labor, all the resources like pesticides, fertilizers, petroleum that went into producing that food is also going to waste. So globally, it's a really big issue. It has a really big carbon footprint, and we can all do better. So to break down the numbers a little bit, within the US, 1/3 of our produce goes to waste. That's like going to the grocery store, 3 bags of food, and just dropping one in the parking lot and never seeing it again. Within our households, the average American household wastes about $1,800 a year on food that they never ultimately eat. At the same time, almost 14% of US households is food insecure. So we have this disparity where we're wasting a ton of food, but we don't have enough to feed people. And as everyone knows, we're in the midst of a pandemic that has made our food system even more unstable. It's made grocery shopping even more of a challenge. So we want to be careful and really plan and know what we're eating and what we're going to do with the food we buy. So if you are interested in going on this journey yourself, I definitely recommend that you check out stopfoodwaste.org. They have a ton of amazing resources that will really help you pinpoint why you waste food. So something that all of us at 18 Reasons have done is the Stop Food Waste Challenge. We took an inventory of our fridges and saw what was going to waste. We took a food log every day for a week and noticed when and why we were throwing away food. And it's really made me more conscious about what I'm doing in my own home. I've always been interested in food waste because I know personally I waste a lot of food. It's something I felt guilty about, but I've never really known like how can I do better. So these are some easy ways to do better. So first of all, I'm going to show you my fridge, which I have to be honest, I did tidy up for showing the world, but the fridge is one place where, you know, you have to be careful or else food is going to go to waste. I think we've all had that experience where you look in the back of your fridge and you open a to-go container and there's some mystery moldy creature, or you go to get those lovely strawberries you bought just a few days ago and they've already started to mold at the bottom. So I'm going to show you how I organize my fridge to help myself reduce food waste. So here we are, and I've never shown the whole world my refrigerator before, but first thing is the temperature. You want to have your fridge at 40 degrees or below to keep your food nice and fresh. You also want to store more temperature-sensitive items towards the back of the fridge where it stays colder longer. I have all my dairy in the back where it's colder. You never want to have in the door because it's really exposed to warm air every time you open it up. I have my berries here visible so they don't get lost in the back. My crisper drawer is set to medium-high humidity, and that's where I keep my veggies that are likely to wilt. I also have this tray that I kind of keep my odds and ends on. So I have like half an onion, half a squash, some jalapenos. And that way, when I'm trying to figure out what's for dinner, I can easily see what needs to be eaten first. I also keep this little sticky note. It just has, you know, things that are going to go bad fast on it, so I can take a quick look at my fridge and know what I need to eat. It really helps with meal planning. I don't have to go digging to find out what I have. When I go grocery shopping, it's all there on a list for myself already. I know what I've eaten, what I have left over from the last time I went grocery shopping. So speaking of grocery shopping, always shop with a grocery list. It can be really overwhelming when you walk into the store and you don't know what you're buying. You know, you have a budget, but you don't know how you're going to spend it. So Stop Food Waste has a really nice grocery list you can find on their website where you can plan your meals. You can mark down what you already have, and you can mark down what you need to buy. This really helps you be cost efficient when you're shopping. It helps you meal plan. I know that's always a challenge for me. I go and I buy too much food. I'm overly ambitious. So really dialing it down, knowing what I'm having for each meal is super helpful. So planning and preparing and storing your produce properly is a big way to extend their shelf life and get all of your value for the money you're spending. I know none of us would take $2,000 and just throw it away. So let's not do that in our refrigerators either. So before we hear from Chefs Mike and Elise, I am going to show you a few simple ways that I make my produce last longer. So first of all, this was a little experiment I did. I went through my fridge last night just to see what was in there. And I had these really soft, like kind of bendable carrots. I'd left the greens attached, which was my first mistake. So the carrot, being a root, really wants to keep the greens alive. That's their whole purpose in life. They store energy to feed the greens. So I should have removed the tops right away. That's the first thing you can do to extend the shelf life of root veggies. But then, knowing that they were soft and kind of had lost their crunch, I soaked them in water for the night, and you can see they have turned nice and crispy again. So I've kind of given them a second life here. I can cook with them, or I could even eat them raw. They're like as fresh as they were when I first got them. Now I'm going to show you some of the ways to store herbs. I think we probably all had this experience where you're making a recipe and it calls for like a teaspoon of cilantro or 3 leaves of basil, but grocery stores don't really sell herbs in those quantities. They usually come in big bunches like this. So with the right care, we can make this bunch last for actually a couple of weeks in my experience. So you want to treat it just like a bunch of flowers. We're going to cut the very bottom of the stem off. And that will just give us a fresh end that can absorb water. I'm going to put some water in this glass. And then just pop my cilantro in just like it was a bunch of flowers. So that's a great start. It will have fresh access to water and it will stay perky and alive longer. Also going to slip the plastic bag I bought it in right over the top. This will increase the humidity a little bit. And then I'm going to stick it in the fridge. And I do this every time I buy cilantro now. It's really been a game changer for me. Instead of throwing away bunches of cilantro every week or composting it, I now have fresh herbs all week long, and I can just take a couple of leaves and use them when I want. The same goes for basil. So basil you can keep in water fresh. When you do that, you actually want to keep them on your counter rather than the fridge. They'll just stay fresher longer at room temperature. But you can also preserve this in a variety of ways. So you can dry it out, and then you have dried basil. You can make pesto or another way of preserving it that you can all the time. Or you can actually like blend it with olive oil, which is kind of the beginnings of pesto anyway, and then put it in an ice cube tray to freeze. As soon as it's frozen, you can pop them right out of the ice cube tray, put them in a plastic bag or a Tupperware container, keep them in your freezer, and anytime you want to add a little bit of flavor to a dish, you can just pop one of those ice cubes right in. Yeah, so feel free if you are watching live, if you have any ways that you reduce food waste in your own home, you can pop it in the chat. I'd love to hear how other people do this. I'm always learning more from the folks in our class and our educators. So share your tips, please. Kat, do you have any tips?
I do like to use a pesto, and I had a bunch of arugula left over last night, and I made a recipe from our wonderful chef Mike for an almond and arugula pesto. So it's not necessarily an herb, but I threw my parsley ends in there, and it gave it a really wonderful flavor.
Cool, thanks for sharing. So another one of my favorite ways to make the most of everything I buy is to make my own veggie stock. As I'm cooking throughout the week, I'll save the odds and ends from my veggies. I put them all in like a pint container in the freezer. And then when I'm making rice or pasta or basically anything where you could use water, I just use some of that veggie stock to cook instead. And it adds a lot of flavor. So from all the scraps of my food, I'm actually saving flavor and getting more value for my money. And you can use things that you can't really eat in any other form, like onion skins, the roots of garlic, all of that kind of stuff I save and put in the freezer. And yeah, I see Mike saying in the chat, the carrot greens also make a great addition to salad or pesto. So when you do get like beets or carrots that have their greens still attached, you do want to remove them to keep the roots fresh longer, but there's plenty of ways you can use those. They're completely edible. They have a ton of great flavor, full of nutrients and minerals. So you can make pesto or stir fry or even add them to your salad. And then you don't have to buy salad greens. You're kind of getting like 2 ingredients for the price of 1. Yes, so let me think. There are, as I said, there are tons of great resources on stopwaste.com. .org, excuse me. There's a fruit and veggie storage guide, so knowing where to put each piece of produce really helps extend their life. Things like apples actually emit a ripening hormone. So if you keep your apples with other fruit, they're going to ripen faster and go bad faster. So keeping apples separate, you can store them on the counter till they're ripe. Same goes for tomatoes, avocados, and stone fruit. And you're going to want to keep root veggies cool and dark, which is kind of their natural environment anyway. So I'm just going to take a second and look in the chat. It looks like lots of folks are sharing great tips. And I think I did ask our health promoter, Elsa, to share some of the ways that doing the Stop Food Waste Challenge has impacted her own cooking and her own kitchen. So let's take a second and hear a little testimonial from Elsa.
Perfect.
Stop food waste promotes plan well, store well, and eat well to avoid wasting food. For me, now during the pandemic, that has become more important because I make a lot less trips to the store, so I have to utilize everything I have. What I have been doing is every time I'm going to cook any vegetables, I wash them and cut them and peel them, and all of the discards I put in a plastic bag, put it in the freezer, make when I have a lot, I make a broth, a vegetable broth that could be the base for a nice soup of any kind, but also to use for instead of water when I have to make a stew or any other kind of dish that requires a little bit of water. This way is more nutritious and is better for my family, and I feel that I'm using everything I have. To avoid food waste, we've been told to utilize parsley, basil, cilantro, cut the bottoms and put them in water in the refrigerator, and that works very well. But if you want to extend the life of those herbs, You can also do what I just learned recently from the chef Jacques Pepin on Facebook. You can wash it and clean it, and then cut the bottom, but the big chunk, leave only the leaves that you're going to be using soon. Save the little bottoms and put them in the freezer. And when you need them, and another day, you can take them out and chop them real well and add it to any kind of food that you're preparing. What it does is just utilize everything you have in addition to giving very delicious flavors to your food. And you can include several of those herbs together.
I was really glad also decided to share some of the tips we've learned from doing our Stop Food Waste challenge. So I was just finishing putting my basil in the jar, and I saw Anna in the chat box mentioned using a wet paper towel to extend the life of some produce. So I just wanted to show I do that. I bought these greens at the farmer's market, but I saved these big plastic containers to store greens because they work really well. They hold there's humidity in, and they're large enough that there's some like air so things don't rot. But before I put them in the fridge, I just add a damp paper towel. This increases there's humidity in there and will help extend their life. And I saw Anna does that for bean sprouts as well. So I've never tried that. I'll have to do that next time I get bean sprouts. All right, in just a second, I'm going to turn things over to our chefs, Mike and Elise. They are going to make a spiced pear cake and a parsnip and pear soup. And I've actually made both of these recipes in the last week. They're really delicious and use every part of the pear, every part of the parsnip, and really highlight how using all parts of the ingredient of the produce will really deepen the flavor and give you more value for your money. So again, every year, on average, the American household wastes almost $2,000 on food that they buy and never eat. Obviously, sometimes that will happen. We're not perfect. There's no way to make sure everything goes according to plan. But food that you're not going to eat is really important to compost. So we're lucky here in the Bay Area and Alameda County. We all have access to a green bin. In some areas, it's a little more challenging to get your food scraps into compost, but I did just want to show you how I do it in my house. So for a long time, I had one of those cute like little compost pails, but I was getting sick of having to wash all the time in the summer. You know, it can attract fruit flies. So now I just use a bowl or a brown paper bag. Often the bag I got produce in. It's a little more challenging during COVID to use reusable bags. So you might be finding yourself with more brown paper bags in the grocery store. I just put my compost in there on a daily basis and take it out. So if you're worried that composting in your house is like somehow kind of stinky or gross, it doesn't have to be. You just have to, you know, kind of dedicate a container or a system to doing that. Composting is really our last ditch effort to get some extra value from our food. I think sometimes it makes you feel less guilty if you're putting food in a compost bin. Ultimately, composting only recaptures like 1% of the energy that went into producing that food. So it's really best to try and eat the food, get it into the hands of the folks who need it. If you do have like processed or preserved goods that you know, they're going to be by their best by date sometime soon, consider donating that. We only want to donate food that, you know, is not only edible, but nutritious and respectful and delicious. So you have to consider doing that before food goes bad. But in general, the best by date is something in your own home you can take with a little bit of wiggle room. Always smell your food, always examine it. It smells fine, it looks fine. It's not, you know, meat or dairy. You're not feeding someone else with it. It should be fine. Even meat and dairy in your own home, if you're only feeding yourself, you know, you don't have to follow those best by dates to the letter.
And
yeah,
Francesca,
yes, Kat.
Why is it important to compost instead of throwing it into the trash? Why should I compost instead of putting it in my trash can?
Good question. So as I mentioned, it does only capture a tiny percent of the energy that went into producing the food in the first place. But compost yields a really valuable product in its own right. So when we compost, we can create healthy soils that not only sequester carbon, but can grow more nutritious food for folks. So adding compost to your soil, whether in your home or in landscaping, really increases the quality of the soil you're working with. It can stop runoff. It can help you grow like native plants that are good for the ecosystem, and it sequesters carbon. So soil health is not something we're going to get into too much here, but I know Stop Waste also has a ton of great tips about soil health. So if you're interested in that, I would head over there.
And
okay.
Also, I know that when we throw our compost into the landfill, it gets piled up a lot and gets heated, and it creates a lot of methane. And if we're worried about the environment, methane isn't something we like so much.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. I can't believe I skimmed over that. But yes, when food waste goes into the landfill, it is in an anaerobic environment. It cannot break down in a natural way, and the bacteria that actually break things down in an anaerobic environment produce a ton of methane, which is one of the most potent greenhouse gases. So by composting, we're really doing two things. We are adding value to our soil. We're, enriching our soil, increasing its nutrient value, and getting a second life out of the food scraps, but we're also preventing greenhouse gas emission from landfills. So by composting, you are doing two amazing things. But even better than that is eating the food in the first place before it turns into something we need to compost. So multifold ways to reduce your own carbon footprint and kind of lower your impact on the earth. In America, our lifestyles, like we all have, a really big carbon footprint. Little things like this can really help reduce our footprint. And you might think to yourself, like, I'm just one person in my house. Am I really having that big of an impact? Like, don't restaurants, don't farms, don't grocery stores waste a ton more food? And in reality, that's not true. 43% of wasted food in America comes from households. So our food system is pretty efficient, from the farm to the grocery store to the restaurants. They have an incentive to not waste food. All of those things run on really small profit margins. They are doing everything they can to streamline things and extend life of produce. In our houses, we kind of like go to the grocery store, we pick what we want, we bring it home and shove it in our fridges, and like maybe we'll cook with it, maybe we won't. So while it seems like a really small thing, it could have a huge impact on our local ecosystem, our local carbon emissions, as well as globally. So yeah.
And Francesca, I heard you mention fridges, and another great thing that we could potentially do, I know we have wonderful programs here in the Bay Area, but we have a community fridge program here in the Bay Area. So if you do buy too much, you can always look to see if you have a community fridge near you, so you can avoid that food waste and give it to someone who might be food insecure.
I love that. Yeah, it's kind of hard to figure out how wasted food can help feed food insecure folks. Often that food is not being wasted in a place they have access to. It's not easy to get the food into the hands of folks who really need it. But with these community initiatives like community fridges, food shelves, food pantries, you can, contribute to the food security of someone in your community. It's also great during this pandemic. It's been really hard to connect with folks. You might never interact with your neighbors or even friends who you used to see on a weekly basis. If you make something like a casserole or soup and you have way too much of it, you can always freeze a portion, drop it off for someone, or freeze it for later. I think that's a really nice way to take care of each other during this time, is sharing food. Things like a buy nothing group on Facebook. If you have leftovers of an ingredient, if you have a ton of not going to use, try to get them into the hands of someone who can. There are ways to do it, and it's just a nice way to be a good neighbor and care for your community right now. Okay, so unless there's any other questions or if you have any thoughts, Kat, I say we jump into Mike and Elise's wonderful video. All right.
I think it would be great to hear from them. And here we go.
And the recipes for this video are linked in the description to the video. So if you do want to make it, go ahead and check out those recipes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Elise. I'm the Community Programs Manager in Alameda County, and today we'll be walking you through making a spice cake with pears, using up that old bottle of wine and reducing it down into a mulled wine glaze to go right on top. Let's go! We'll start by preheating this to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, and I have 3 Bartlett pears. We're going to use 1 in the cake, and the 2 are going to be the wonderful garnish on top. And I'm just going to peel off all of the peels of these 3. A little slippery. And I'm going to save these just in case I want to use them a little later. Now for the cake, I'm going to cut my... And I'm going to save these just in case I want it all the way around the core, leaving only the great juicy meaty parts on the sides. And then cut slices all the way down each panel and turn it around to turn this pear into cubes or dice. Just like so. And I'm going to dice my way all the way through all these panels, throwing all these pieces into a bowl on the side. Now with the 2 pears that remain, using a tunnel cut, my knife goes through my fingers, the slippery pear doesn't go anywhere, slicing it in half, flipping onto the flat side, slicing it into quarters. And this will help remove the cores in a way that's very aesthetic, since we will be layering these on top of our cake. Now just be careful cutting them. As the pears get more ripe, they become juicier and even more slippery. So just be very careful when you're cutting off these cores. And after they're cored, we're just going to slice them into beautifully thin slices to create a wonderful fan effect.
And Francesca, I think we need to stay unmuted just so we can hear that wonderful video from Elise. Thank you.
The zest of half of a lemon, making sure to scrape the bottom of that zester and stirring it all together till it's all combined. Now in a separate bowl, adding 6 tablespoons of butter that's been softened to room temperature, adding a 1/3 cup of white sugar, and I am creaming together the butter and the sugar till it becomes much lighter and fluffier, as you can see here. To this bowl, I'm adding in 1 egg, about a teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1/4 teaspoon of ground ginger, 1/4 teaspoon ground cinnamon, about 8 gratings of fresh nutmeg. Also a 1/3 cup of sour cream, about a 1/3 cup of applesauce, get a little extra sweetness from there. And I'm just going to mix this all together until it's all combined. It only takes about a minute because we don't want to overbeat the egg. Now the idea is to not go for a splatter painting, so I'm just going to scrape down the sides, clean it up, and move on to our dry ingredients. Now with a 1.25 cups flour, 1/4 teaspoon baking soda, 1/2 teaspoon baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon salt, and just mixing this all together so all of those dry ingredients are combined and evenly distributed.
And easy enough, just dumping all those dry ingredients into our wet ingredients, and I'm just gonna mix them together with a spatula just until it's all combined. It's gonna be pretty thick, but make sure you're scraping down the sides, getting all the last bits of flour. Then I'm adding in my spiced pear cubes. Just gonna fold those in because we don't want them smashed. Our batter is all good to go. The 9-inch cake pan with parchment on the bottom. It's been sprayed so it's non-stick. Dumping the batter in very gracefully. Spread so it's nice and evenly distributed. Hitting the edges of the pan. The beautiful smooth slope on the top. Now's the time you get to become an artist and use all those wonderfully sliced pears and layer them however you would like on top of your cake. I'm going for a little bit of a flower pattern with this one, having it extend all the way out so that every bite has a big chunk of that pear. Now it's ready to go in the oven. Popping it into the middle rack. Setting a timer for about 40 minutes.
Great. Got the cakes in the oven. Gotta find something to do with these peels. They're a little less appealing now, but Chef Mike, take them away.
Hi, it's Mike at 18 Reasons. I'm here today to talk you through a quick little recipe illustrating our drive not to waste food. So it's a quick little pear and parsnip soup, and we're going to put it together and utilize every bit of everything that we can. So I've got a couple of parsnips. They have seen better days. They're getting a little bit old. They're not completely hard, but they're washed. They're still delicious. I'm going to start off this recipe by peeling them. Now there's an awful lot of parsnip flavor in the peel of a parsnip. So I'm not going to waste that flavor. I'm going to peel this so that when we puree the soup, we get a better texture on our pureed soup. But I don't want to lose this flavor. This is good parsnip flavor. Parsnips are one of my favorite vegetables. So I'm going to take all of these peels from the 2 parsnips, and I'm going to put them in my veg stock. This recipe calls for 4 cups of vegetable stock. Vegetable stock is another way to save food that has seen better days in your vegetable bin, in your crisper drawer. It's a great way to make your own stock from those scraps. So I'm just going to gather these peels up really quickly here and keep all of those flavors. We're going to infuse these flavors into our soup, and then once we've gotten the flavor from them, then these peels can go in the compost bin. But if you like chefs, we're thrifty. The truth is we're cheap. I paid money for these parsnips. I want to get all the flavor I can out of them. The same as with the parsnip, I have a beautiful pear here. I'm going to peel the pear, and I'm going to keep these pear peelings as well. Again, I'm peeling it so that when I roast it in the oven and then put it into my soup, I get a better texture in my soup. But pear peels have an awful lot of beautiful flavor in them. Now, I don't want to waste it. So I'm going to keep all of these pear peels and add those to my vegetable stock as well. And hey, my friend Elise is cooking. Elise, do you got something for me? There we go. Thank you, Elise. I knew you had some peels over there. Good news. Let's see. And so now I have a big pile of pear peelings and a big pile of parsnip peelings. I'm going to cut down my pear. I don't need the core, but I think Elise does. Elise, you were expecting this, right? There you go. So I'm just going to chop up my pear into big pieces there. I'm going to do the same with the parsnip. We'll put the ends of the parsnip into the stock. We'll just chop up the parsnip into pieces to roast really quickly. If you wanted to, a parsnip has kind of a woody core in the middle. See how that core is a different color and a different texture? If I was really making a really refined soup today, I might decide to cut that core out and then roast the parsnip and put the core into my stock, again, to get the flavor out of that before I compost it. So there I have some pear peelings and some parsnip cores. Over here, I've got my lovely parsnips and pears. I'm going to put those into a bowl. And then I'm going to put half an onion into my soup as well. Onion peels are perfectly edible, and they add a deep, rich, dark brown color to stocks when you include them in. So again, no reason, especially with a soup, to let any of this go to waste. I'm going to put that into my same pile, and then chopped up my onion. Not really worried about exact cuts on this onion or the pears or the parsnips. The soup is going to be pureed at the end. So in my bowl, I have onion, pear, and parsnip. And then here I have all my vegetable scraps, 4 cups of vegetable stock, and I'm just going to add these parsnip cores and pear peelings into that pan and pot full of vegetable stock, and I'm going to infuse it with the flavor. I'm stealing pear flavor and parsnip flavor and adding it into my soup for free, and free is one of my favorite numbers. Now I'm just going to take a little bit of oil, little vegetable oil and neutral flavored oil, drizzle it into my vegetables and my pears, season with some salt and pepper, give it a good toss around in the bowl. Spill those out in one layer on a sheet pan and pop it into a 450 degree oven. I'm going to cook it there for about a half an hour till they're lightly caramelized and soft and tender and all those flavors have intensified. There is no way of knowing that this beautiful parsnip right here, about to go into the oven to be roasted, was looking as ugly as it did at the beginning of this video. All the flavor is still there, nothing is wasted. So I'm going to pop this into the oven. We're going to roast it for a half an hour, then come back and puree the soup and put it together. Okay, so we have simmered our roasted parsnips and pears and onions in that vegetable stock that we infused with the skins and cores. I'm going to pour off some of the liquid. This is something I always do when I'm making a pureed soup. I want to control the viscosity of this soup in the end. So by getting rid of some of the liquid, I'm going to save that on the side in reserve and use that to adjust the viscosity of my soup. Now all the rest goes in to my blender. All those flavors and all those goodnesses. Anytime I'm putting hot liquids into a blender, I'm going to keep the top off to allow the steam to exit. I'm going to put a little towel over the top to cover, and I'm just going to blend up the soup. And add liquid to change the viscosity. Because I have this on the side, I am in control of the texture of my soup. And I like that. Puree this up. Really nice. Give it a taste. I like the flavor. At this point, if you wanted to, you could adjust the salt, the pepper, maybe a little splash of apple cider vinegar might brighten the soup up. I'm really liking that. It's hot, it's sweet, and it's parsnippy. I'm going to add that to my bowl. There's my soup. I've got a little bit of yogurt on the side, just as a little swirl of yogurt to garnish my soup with. And there we go. Stopping food waste with pear and parsnip soup. Thank you very much. This is Mike at 18 Reasons.
Thanks, Chef Mike, for these cores. Now that we might compost these, cores actually have a lot of naturally occurring pectin in them. So we're going to use these cores to thicken up our red wine reduction. So we're going to make kind of like a mulled red wine glaze that's going to go on top of our cake. All right, so we got the cores of about 3 or 4 pears in the pot, 1 star anise, 4 whole cloves, cinnamon sticks split in half.
Add in 3/4 cups of sugar. Squeeze in the juice of 1 lemon.
Juice of 1 orange.
And pour in 1 cup of red wine. You can go ahead and stir this all together, start dissolving the sugar, and then go ahead and turn the heat on to high because we want to bring this up to a boil, but keep stirring it every once in a while and keep it combined. Once it comes up to a boil, go ahead and turn it down to a medium-low and stir it every once in a while. We just want it all that water to evaporate off and those flavors to concentrate. Once it's reduced to your liking, I went ahead and plucked out my orange and lemon rinds and will pour my liquid through a strainer just to get the last of those pear cores and just let this sit out and cool until it thickens. Now that the glaze is cooling, it's been about 40-45 minutes and I'm checking on the cake. And you can see some browning right along the edges. And as long as the knife comes out clean, once inserted in the middle, then it's good to go, and we'll let it cool. Time to garnish! Cut a slice out of this cake, and taking my glaze, which is cooled down and thickened up, and just drizzling that right on top, making sure it's soaking right into the cake.
All right. We have a spiced pear cake with a mulled red wine reduction glaze using Chef Mike's wonderful pear cores. So delicious dessert, no food waste. Cheers.
All right. I want to say a big thank you to Chefs Mike and Elise for shooting those videos and really highlighting how by using every part of the ingredient, you're not only reducing food waste, but you're really adding value and adding flavor to the dishes you're cooking. I actually made both of those recipes within the last week, and both are extremely delicious. So do check out the recipes linked below if it's something you're interested in. Yeah, we'll just see if there's any last minute questions. I started cutting my leftover basil with some olive oil in my blender. So I'm going to blend that up and freeze it for later. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you all for joining us. It was really nice to have this conversation. Our food waste challenge is also available linked below if you're ready for a reset. You want to examine some of your own habits and how those contribute to food waste. Whether you're thinking trying to eat more healthily, be better at sticking to your grocery budget, cooking more at home, really taking a good inventory of your fridge and your habits can help you, extend your dollar a little further, get more for your money, and reduce your impact on the earth. Kat, did you have any last words of wisdom?
I just wanted to say thank you everyone for joining us. I think the chat will be saved after the stream is over, so make sure to check that out. There are some super good tips in there. And I hope that you take your own Stop Food Waste Challenge. So thank you again, Francesca, and thank you to both Chef Mike and Chef Elise.
Yeah. Definitely check out stopfoodwaste.org for more tips. We have a ton of more videos on our YouTube channel. We have our upcoming classes at www.18reasons.org with our amazing chef instructors. And I also wanted to say a big thank you to Stop Waste. They've provided a lot of support for us over the last year and have so many amazing resources for reducing food waste in your own home. As I mentioned, there's a shopping list, there's a guide to the fridge where things should be stored properly, tons of great recipes for using leftovers. Yeah, so thank you. I look forward to hearing more about how you're reducing food waste in your own home. Bye, everyone.